Oh man, it's June. It's getting warmer. It's almost summer. TF2's summer update is probably gonna come out soon. Or depending on when you're watching this, it's already out. How was it? Well, while we're waiting, I'm going to compile a list of the 10 best updates TF2 has gotten, spanning its entire 10 years, based on some combination of the following: the amount of hype surrounding the update, its presentation, and most importantly, the content it added and its lasting impact. Oh yeah, and opinion. Everyone's list is gonna be different. Shouldn't have to explain that, but you know, it's the internet. So here we go, the 10 best TF2 updates. The number 10 spot was actually kind of a tough one. It ended up being down to the summer update of 2013, or Love and War. To me, Love and War is a far more memorable update, if not just because it had expiration date. And as good as expiration date is, the rest of the update that it came with was... it wasn't bad. It just didn't add or change as much as I remember. The short kinda overshadows the rest of it. But an update that wasn't even given a name beat it out? Yeah, pretty much. 2013 summer update isn't even listed on the TF2 website. This update added approximately 1 billion cosmetic items and 2 community maps. And that's kind of it as far as new things go. But it also included a lot of mostly good weapon balance changes and a ton of miscellaneous bug fixes, map improvements, and sound issue fixes. Everything. A whole bunch of problems that have been piling up over 6 years were fixed. It wasn't the flashiest update with a bunch of new gimmicks added, but it was kind of a necessary one. One that cleaned up the game and just made it better than it was before. It's the kind of update I think we could use more of. A whole lot of fixes and some pretty good balancing. It was the high point of a pretty mediocre year for TF2. A lot of things could have been in this spot, but I'm going with the good old nameless summer update 2013. Yeah. Number 9 is going to go to the Pyro update. The one from 2008. Yeah, we're going way back. The second major update TF2 ever got. It was the first ever update to make a community map, or maps, official, adding both Fast Lane and Turbine. But Turbine doesn't make an update top 10. Maybe it does, depending on who you ask. What makes the update really important is that it actually gave some kind of purpose to the Pyro. 1 out of 9 classes. This update introduced Air Blast, a basic mechanic that adds some kind of depth to a class that really didn't have a whole lot before. It also removed the flamethrower's horrible damage fall off, originally going down to just 25% damage at the farthest range. Later they would add back fall off, but not nearly to that extreme. The Pyro update also introduced the backburner, flare gun, and extinguisher. Not exactly the most balanced batch of weapons on release, but their stats were ironed out over the years. Well, maybe not the extinguisher, but I'd say the other two are much better balanced now. We can argue about Pyro balance for days and what needs to be done next, but the original Pyro update was what made the class usable. Not a joke. Less of a joke. Whatever. It's number 9. For number 8, we're somehow gonna go back even further to the first ever major patch, the Gold Rush update. The first ever class update, even though the class's name is nowhere in the title. This was the Medics update. This paved the way for everything that came after it. It introduced unlockable weapons, loadouts, and achievements. Not to mention a little game mode called Payload. Maybe you've heard of it. The Gold Rush update introduced 3/10 of Medic's current unlocks, which is kinda sad when you think about it. But just try and imagine a world without the Kritzkrieg or the Ubersaw. See? You can't do it. Honestly, this update just kinda needs to be somewhere in here. Look what it added. Even if most of what it introduced was fixed up and improved in later updates, this one still did it first. Pyro! Mania. Another Pyro update? Kinda. Not really. Pyro is mostly just the theme. The class itself only actually got one weapon. This update was led up to with Team Fortress's first ARG, with a whole bunch of odd items like goldfish, cheese wheels, and banana peels being added to the drop system. The items descriptions would change if you had the eliminating the impossible medic set equips, and then there were some kind of craft error messages and QR codes and Morse code. Watching the whole thing unfold was something. All of this leading up to the final Meet the Team video, Meet the Pyro, and the Pyromania updates, which introduced new weapons and a new game mode, and a decent amount of balance changes, which at that point were pretty rare even for a major update. Pyromania is just a solid patch, and the name is a reference to a Def Leppard album, so that's gotta earn it some more points. Right? Yeah, it does. The second dual class update. The war between Soldier and Demo was like an event, a week-long update, with the first multi-page comic, actually showing us what the administrator looks like, introducing Miss Pauling as a character, and I mean it's the first time we've ever even learned any of the class's names. This is also the update that introduced crafting, something that just seems like a given nowadays. It also had the big old propaganda art contests, for people to make propaganda for either side. It's kind of unfortunate we haven't really seen anything like that since. And of course, you can't forget about the death counter that would determine who would end up winning the gunboats, which was the Soldier. Spoilers. But still, both classes got a pack of 3 weapons, including some of my personal favorites, the Charge and Targe and the Islander. Plus the war added Gorge and Double Cross. Good maps, good update. It seems kind of weird putting Sniper vs. Spy above the War Update, since the War Update kind of improved on a lot of what Sniper vs. Spy did. But there was one thing that Sniper vs. Spy added that was so important, it would change the world forever. Hats! Yeah, hats. Sniper vs. Spy was technically the longest multi-day update, going a total of 9 days, adding 3 weapons for each class and introducing payload race. But who cares about that? It added hats. Listen, I like cosmetic items as much as the next guy, but hats are legitimately one of the most influential things added to the game. How often do people still talk about the war, or Sniper vs. Spy? And how often do people still talk about hats? All the time! We're doing it right now! I mean, it's a good update overall, but the introduction of hats kind of solidifies its spot here. Okay, this one is probably more down to personal opinions. I mean, more so than the others. But I really enjoyed Gunman. And it was well received at the time too, but I'm not sure most people would really put it in their top 5. Though maybe I'm wrong. It was the first update that really made use of the map workshop, which made the addition of community maps far more frequent. Contracts were really fun, weapon skins are okay. But just like the summer update of 2013, it included a whole bunch of fixes and probably the best balancing ever put into one update. Sure, there are a few duds, but the majority of the balancing in that patch was pretty on point. It's also one of the only updates in recent years to put any focus on buffing Heavy's horribly mediocre list of unlocks. But I feel like I'm beating a dead horse talking about that again. Sure, Gunmetal didn't add any new weapons, but I'd still rather see old weapons actually be made worth using before they just throw some new ones in. Just a really good update that made playing TF2 really fun again when the game was getting kinda stale. Even though it came out quite a bit before, this was actually the update that really made me interested in making TF2 videos. Good times. The Man vs. Machine update introduced a huge new game mode called Man vs. Machine. This update was hinted as far back as the 119th update in 2010. That's kinda crazy to think about. They were working on it that whole time, even with all the other stuff that came out during those 2 years. And like the Pyromania update, it had an ARG and a lot of build-up. It massively changes the regular game. It's fun. It's fairly well balanced. I don't know, you fight robots. It's cool. It's not updated enough, but it's a great mode. I don't need to explain this. The Mann-Conomy update was huge. By far the biggest update at that point, and still one of the biggest updates the game has ever gotten. We were used to getting, what, 1, maybe 2 class packs in one update? This one added 5, plus a few extra miscellaneous weapons, and a whole bunch of hats, and the vintage quality, and unusual quality, and trading, and the Manco store. Again, a store and trading don't seem like such a big deal now, But back then, that was huge. I mean, not just for TF2, but games in general. The idea of paying real money for a virtual hat? I'll look like a chump wearing a hat in real life. The virtual one, not so much. This update added a lot of stuff. Important stuff. I mean, it just speaks for itself. Not literally. That would be kind of weird. But it's number 2. What's next? You wait and find out, I guess. Number 1. Updated localization files April 27th, 2017. Hey man, those files gotta be localized. It's number 1. Aha, you've been duped! I tricked you, and you fell for it. That's not number 1. The real number 1 update, according to me, is the Uber update. If an update like Mann-Conomy wasn't the biggest, what was? It's the Uber update. I don't know, I feel like that was kind of implied. But just because an update is big, that doesn't mean it's good. I went into this really not expecting to put the Uber update as number 1. Like Sniper vs. Spy, the Uber update was a multi-day update, but instead of announcing, one new weapon a day, it introduced sets of them. Sometimes multiple classes in one day. Pyro just got the detonator, and Engineer didn't get anything, because it's Engineer. But 8 out of 9 classes got something, and 7 out of 9 of them got sets. Soldier got 2 for some reason, because it's Soldier. 22 weapons were added on the day the update came out. We'll probably never see something like that again, and maybe we shouldn't. Many, if not most of the weapons in that update were not exactly well balanced when they came out, which is honestly why I didn't think I'd put this as number 1. But just the amount of hype and everything surrounding this update. Before the update was even announced, exploding doves to be found around certain maps, and the blog was updated. It was all leading up to the first Meet the Team video in 2 years. And then we found out there was going to be a week-long update with a different theme each day. Each page has really great artwork, and I still go back to just look at it from time to time. And then on the final day, we all found out that TF2 was going to be free to play forever. That's huge! There was a giant influx of new players. A ton of new weapons that probably took me over a month to get them all. And the game was getting a whole lot of attention. It was almost like a second release. I mean, I could look back now on the Uber update and point out its bad balancing and whatever. But at that time, this update blew my mind! Sure, it was mostly weapons, and almost all of them needed to be balanced later on, but hey, I like the Uber update. And 6 years later, it's still one of, if not the most significant updates TF2 has or ever will have gotten. And that's why it's number 1. Well, that was something. It was actually kind of difficult to make. Just the amount of times I questioned the placement of everything. I mean, there are a lot of good updates. And you know what? If this year's updates are good, the list will be outdated. But I'll be happy. I was actually thinking about doing a follow-up with the most disappointing updates, but I guess it depends on how much people like this one. We'll see. It's a billion degrees in here. Like, comment, subscribe. You won't. You're scared. Anyway, yeah, this is over. Bye.